Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the Second Bite Podcast. We have an interesting and a slightly different episode today. Jordan Choo is my guest from Kogneta. Jordan, super happy you could be with us.
Yeah, super excited to be here, Todd. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. Super excited to share my story and learnings, and hopefully your audience will get a kick out of it.
I think that they will. First of all, before we get in, a little housekeeping. Our friends at Tower Partners, a great investment banking firm, which I'm now part of, is our sponsor. So thank you to the good folks at Tower Partners. We talk a lot about, on the Second Bite podcast, we talk a lot about, agencies that do larger transactions, larger than yours. There's equity, there's earnout, there's cash up front, there's all that kind of stuff. Yours was smaller and yours was all cash. And so that brings up a whole lot of questions. Before we jump into the questions, tell me about Kogneta. What do you do? Who do you do it for? Because you had been running the business for roughly 9 years, right?
Yeah. So ran the business for 9 years. Amazing experiences, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. So we are a digital marketing agency that helps local clients really find and acquire clients and businesses at scale using profitable and predictable strategies across SEO and paid media, whether that be paid search or paid social. So think about our clients being, single location law firms all the way up to national home franchises.
Excellent. You've been doing it at the time. You were in business for about 9 years. You did a and you were a little bit under $1 million in revenue. You did a transaction and you got all cash, spaced out a little bit over time. If you could, when somebody does that, typically for a business of that size, for an agency of that size, it's not life-changing money. So there is something going on in the back of your mind, usually a year or two in advance of that led you to a decision that to actually transact the agency. Can you just share with us a little bit about what was going on in your mind and with the business, kind of leading up to your conversation with the folks that were your ultimate buyers?
Yeah. So, the years leading up to it, I was contacted by, a whole chunk of people looking to acquire my agency. And it wasn't quite the right time for me. I still felt like there was a lot of opportunity to grow. So I really kind of hunkered down and focused on kind of the growth and repeatability of it. Up to that point, I was really focusing on building it as more of a lifestyle business than something I would really want to exit out of. But as these conversations continued, I'm like, you know what, if people are finding me valuable and, a potential buy right now, why not kind of hunker down and hustle a little bit for the next few years to put it in a state that's ready to be acquired? So hunkered down, grew it to an amazing team, had, 6 people across the globe, full time, which was an amazing experience. But eventually, I got burnt out, right? Working all the time, solo founder. There were a couple of things in my personal life that was burning me out as well. So when when this offer came on the table, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. The industry itself was changing a lot at that time as well, with AI really coming out full force, both from how people are searching for businesses, along with how it impacts us as agency owners from an operational perspective as well. So timing was really right at when the offer came through. It was the right amount, and the stars just kind of lined up, and I took the plunge.
did you find it as a small agency? Did you find it harder to be competitive given AI changes, given all the things going on in the industry?
You know what? Yes and no. So as a smaller agency, I felt like because we had a very tightly knit team and we had very close relationships with our clients, we were able to be a lot more nimble and kind of agile with how we were thinking about AI, both from an internal operations perspective and how to leverage it for clients. And clients really trusted us as well. So they were very open and very comfortable with us testing out new strategies, new SOPs, new channels, or what have you. While at the same time, on the other side of the coin, because we were so small, we really had to carve out time and prioritize it within our schedule, right? Like we don't have a limitless budget when it comes to testing new things. So we really had to be strategic about what we wanted to test and why we were testing it as well.
So, and let me ask you this. So we did last year a small transaction as well for a client, and they were under $1 million. They were maybe 600-ish of EBITDA. And their transaction was about 3 times. That gentleman, who I admire greatly, wanted to sell his agency because he wanted to run an airplane ambulance service in the remote part of Africa. God bless him, right? And so that felt right to him. Most people that I talk with, when they say, it's 3 times EBITDA, they're like, well, I'm just going to keep it because a year from now, I'll have earned a third of it and I'll still have the whole agency. So the thing that I find compelling for people to make a decision at a multiple and, smaller like that is something else to do. Or they're just completely burnt out and happy to move on. Were you more of, I had something else to do, or were you more of the burnt out part?
I was more the burnt out part. It was rough balancing some personal things on the side, stacked on with agency life, which is constantly go, go, go. To the point where like I actually took almost a year sabbatical. And it's funny, Todd, right? I spoke with a lot of my friends about taking time off, and they're like, you're going to want to work again. You have that entrepreneurial gene, you have that itch. You're going to last 2 months at the most. And what was really telling for me is that it took almost 10 months for me to actually get that itch again. Wow. So that really put things in perspective to me about how just exhausted mentally and physically I was with just life in general. And I just really needed to sit back, unwind, decompress, and just relax and find myself again.
So your deal was all cash, right? You got a majority of it at close, and you got some 6 months later, some 12 months later. Do you just put that in the bank and then pay your bills and walk the streets? Do you travel all the time? Do you read all the time? What was that experience like for you?
It was so refreshing. So I'm up in Toronto, Canada. So spent the summer here in Toronto, just enjoying the city, enjoying life. Sitting around or going out exploring. It was really nice. Almost being able to be a tourist in your own city, which was wonderful. And then I actually went over to Sydney for a few days, and then hopped over to New Zealand for 50. And I just did a nice long road trip by myself across North and South Island, decompressing, enjoying nature again, and then topped it off with a vacation in Fiji. And it was much needed. It was, a great opportunity to just completely disconnect from the world and be with yourself again and really find out who you are outside of work, right? I imagine, Todd, a lot of the owners that you work with, they define themselves as entrepreneurs, as agency owners. And when that title is taken away, who are you? Right. And that exit is a wonderful opportunity for you to rediscover who you are outside of work.
Yeah, it's very interesting because most of the clients we serve don't want to go down that exploration trail, which is the reason why they focus on a second bite and a larger platform and equity upside and all those kind of things, which doesn't make it right or wrong. I think it depends on the person's awareness of what brings them, happiness and joy. I think the idea that they can still identify as an entrepreneur in a different role with a different set of experience, I think putting a bunch of money in the bank helps with just the anxiety of economics. I think having registered a significant win, having built something that somebody would actually write you a check for, is also emotionally, an important, very important achievement. What do you find you miss the most? I understand a lot of things are different, but what do you miss the most from your kind of daily walk as a guy who ran an agency for almost 10 years?
Oh, that's a tough question. Oh man, really good one. I think it's the team. It's being surrounded by both really good people at their core and really smart people as well, pushing you, challenging you. That really gets me excited, right? It's like, how can I learn? How do I make sure I am surrounded and put into a room where I'm not necessarily the smartest person? That I really, really miss. And, just love that at the end of the day.
Yeah. A lot of guys, will take some time after a transaction. Guys that have sold and are going to move on to something else, it feels like during that period of time, they're open and receptive and even looking for what will be their next great idea. It sounds like you didn't go into it with that experience. You went into it not thinking about any of those things. Yet now you're back after 10 months and you're doing something. So tell me how you got to that spot.
Yeah. So took all that time off, came back, and though it was 10 months off, it felt like a decade, right? With how quickly things are moving on the AI front, it's like I lost a decade of time with what happened. So came back, reconnected with a bunch of folks, close friends, people in my network, and then got introduced to these great founders who are building something super, super interesting. Really, really delivering good work and good, in doing good work in a way that actually makes sense for the SEO world and like how things are changing. And after having several conversations with them, they really lined up with what I'm trying to do, is just do good work, really move the needle for clients in a way that's revenue focused and not channel focused, which, not to go on a rant here, but I think like as agency owners, we're constantly kind of horsed with the blinders on of like, this is our channel, this is what we do, and that's all we're focusing on. But the reality of it is clients hire us to drive revenue, and we need to think about things holistically. And, these folks are thinking of it in that way. So, now have the privilege of being part of their team and helping them build this amazing rocket ship for them and their clients.
When you sold the business, did you have a non-compete?
I did have a non-compete, which was fairly short in time.
Okay. Was that a big negotiation point for you?
Not a huge negotiation point. Thanks to the structure of the overall deal, it ended up working out quite well for me. Todd, you mentioned like the cash rather than equity, which was a big thing for me. And then obviously the non-compete worked out quite well too.
To be judgmental a little bit. So let's say this, you've got an agency that's not working well. And I would say that just because of how burnt out it made you and all the time you had to spend and on from there. That doesn't mean you're not doing good work for clients. I got to assume that you are. Do you find that in your mind, is it easier to recognize that and fix it? Or is it easier to bundle it up, sell it, let's say for a low multiple, and then start with a fresh, clean whiteboard and start anew with not a lot, but maybe a little bit of money in your pocket?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's really tough. I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve and like what are you trying to change? Are there core foundational and structural items, well, I'll call them issues, if you will, at the agency that you're currently building? And if so, how long and how much resources is it going to take to actually change that, right? There's a cost benefit analysis that you have to do at the end of the day, right? So what's the cost? What's the benefit? Versus, does it make sense to, as you mentioned, just kind of sell it, wipe it clean, and start fresh? Again, for me, because of the state of mind that I was in at the time, burnt out professionally and personally, it made sense just to kind of start from scratch, if you will. And truth be told, when I did take that time off, I genuinely did not know what I was going to do. I could have been a farmer, in up north in Ontario for all I knew, or I could have stayed in marketing. So I really tried to just focus on my health, and things just kind of fall in place when you do.
I think what is market for a non-compete is 5 years, right? It's 4 or 5 years. For a person that sells their business in the mental state that you were at, my guess is you would say, if that's market, that's fine, go ahead. Which feels like it would have limited the option you've chosen now and would have limited your choices for quite a few years. How did you know enough not to succumb to that, or maybe stay focused on the non-compete, or was it never an issue?
For me, it was really never an issue. When I looked at the agreement, it was, what was the entire picture and what made sense? Like, what was I willing to give way for and like push hard on versus not? And the non-compete really didn't bother me at that time.
Did they ask for a 1-year non-compete? Was that it? Okay. Well, that part's pretty easy. And did you have a banker? Probably not at the size. Did you hire a lawyer to help you through?
Oh yeah, of course. We worked with a lawyer. We worked with a CPA.
Let's talk about the lawyer. Did they do a good job?
Pardon?
Did the lawyer do a good job?
Yeah, amazing job. You know what?
Your lawyer? Let's give him credit then, or her. Who was the lawyer?
Julie Fournier out in Texas. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Huge hat tip to her. If you're looking for an M&A lawyer, cannot recommend her enough.
Excellent. We'll make sure her LinkedIn profile is in the show notes. Do you remember the name of the firm? That's
Put
fine.
me on the spot, Todd.
Yeah, we'll find it. No worries. So she worked you through those important issues.
Yeah. You know what? I've since the start, I've always been in the stance of never cheap out on a lawyer, never cheap out on an accountant.
Yeah.
They can really make or break just any part of a business. So to your audience, please do not cheap out on a lawyer or an accountant.
Good advice. So the firm you're with now is Previsible.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up with a little promote for them. What do they do? Who do they do it for?
Yeah, so they focus on organic visibility, so SEO for enterprise brands, really helping them drive predictable and consistent growth through that channel in a very holistic way.
And they're in Canada?
So they're located in the US with offices in California and Chile.
Wow, very nice. If you met an agency founder and they said to you, we want to do a transaction, what do you think the biggest lesson learned from your experience that you would have them rank at the top of the list to make sure they're focused on as they go into a consideration for something like this?
I'd ask them why. Why are you selling? Is it because it makes sense to sell? Is it because it's a maybe gut reaction to something that's happened? Are they freaking out about, maybe losing a big client? Or does it actually make sense to them, right? Like as entrepreneurs, we have to look at a long time horizon rather than, next month or next quarter. So really understanding that why is super important because it's your baby, right? And you want to make sure that you're leaving your baby on good terms and you're not going to have any like burning regrets afterwards.
Parting question then, on your 10-month walkabout, was there a book that you read or something that was most impactful that shaped your thinking and kind of refreshed you for this next chapter?
Ooh. So funnily enough, I think I read 9 or 10 books during that time, which is the most I've read since probably grade school. I would one book that really sat with me is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Yes, I think many people would say the same thing.
Yeah. It really helped put things in perspective and kind of makes you think about what do you actually want? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? And does it align with who you are and who you want to be?
That's great advice and a wonderful book. For those who haven't read it, it's certainly worth the effort. Jordan, I'm glad that you joined us. I wanted to, as we do from time to time, a little bit of a departure from the standard, large agency, second bite, bigger and better. People do transactions for different reasons. People do small transactions for reasons. And those reasons are good and sound. And the measure of a great success is not always the value of the agency at the time of the transaction. It'll be very interesting to see what transpires with you and Visible. So we will wish you luck on that. We'll certainly keep in touch and hopefully we'll have you on again at some point with a nice transaction from the good folks at Visible.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Todd. Really had a blast chatting with you. And yeah, let's definitely keep in touch.
Sounds good, Jordan. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.